so we're going to start out with some vocabulary. All right, so we've got some vocab. All right, terminology. You are going to have to know terminology, all right, to be able to function, because I'm going to use math words. I'm going to maybe say, okay, we're going to deal with an equation today, or we're going to deal with an algebraic expression. And when I refer to those different things, you need to know what those things are, all right? Hopefully, like I said, a lot of this was covered in middle school, so this should be familiar, all right? So we're going to have an algebraic expression. All right, and sometimes I won't do it in words. If you want it in words, then you can get this obviously from the online notes. All right, a lot of times I will do more examples than actual words. All right, now inside of parentheses here, I'm writing variable expression as well. All right, because depending on the textbook that you are using, they might call it an algebraic expression. They also might call it a variable expression. Two things that are interchangeable. All right, now what it's going to do is it's going to have some numbers in it. It's going to have some variables in it because it's either called a variable expression or an algebraic expression. So you're going to have some variables. All right, and then you're probably going to have some add, subtract, multiply, and divide. You might have some exponents, all right, which is multiplication. All right, so a lot of different things. So they're going to look like maybe say a 2x squared plus a 3. All right, that's an algebraic expression. All right, it could be maybe something that has no numbers, just letters. So x plus y. All right, that's an algebraic expression or a variable expression. All right, both of these had two terms, okay, but it could have more than that. I could do something like an x squared plus a 3x minus a 6. All right, so I can have, it can be very, very long, but it's an algebraic expression in the sense that it's got numbers, probably, it's got some variables, it's got add, subtract, multiply, and divide. All right, none of these had divide in them. All right, now the difference between an expression and an equation. All right, so an equation, and I am going to write a little bit here, must have an equal sign. All right, an equation must have an equal sign. So we all know what the equal sign looks like. Looks like that. I'll put it in parentheses. So then I could have something that looks like x plus 6 equals 4. All right, it's got an equal sign. So the difference between these is the equal sign. This has an equal sign, so I called it an equation. This does not have an equal sign, so it's an algebraic expression. All right, we probably won't do, I mean, from middle school, you should know how to solve that already, which will be a little bit later, but you should be able to solve that. 2x minus 6 equals a negative 14. I had to even be able to throw negative numbers in because you should have worked with negative numbers in middle school. All right, that's like a two-step equation. All right, but again, has an equal sign, so it's an equation. All right, so you do need to know the difference between these two types of things. Okay, now let's add a little bit more here. Oh, what color would be a good color? Let's go with this one. All right, over here, I want to put the word evaluate. All right, and then over here with equation, I want to put the word solve. All right, you're going to have to be able to read directions, okay, and then know what the directions tell you to do. All right, we evaluate algebraic expressions if they tell us what the variables are. If they tell me that x is 2 and y is 3, then I can evaluate that algebraic expression, plug them in and add them up. All right, let's also add the word simplify, because I can simplify algebraic expressions because I can do this thing called combine like terms, all right, which you probably did in middle school. 2x plus 3x is 5x. All right, so if the directions say evaluate or they say simplify, then I am working with expressions. All right, if it says solve, then I have to be working with an equation because I can solve this equation and figure out what needs to go here to make it true. So if I solve that equation, what, x is going to be -2? All right, we all ought to be able to subtract 6 from both sides of the equation and say, hey, x has to be -2 because -2 plus 6 equals 4. So I solve it. So I'm trying to find a specific answer for a variable when I have an equation. When I have an expression, I'm not trying to find that one specific answer. I'm evaluating it, which would give us an answer, or I would simplify it, which would give us the exact same thing we started with, but just in a different form. Okay, so if you don't understand the different words in your directions, it makes it harder to do the problems. Okay, all right, now let's do some more vocab. So let's deal with our expression a little bit here. And I'm not always going to say algebraic expression. I'm not always going to say variable expression. Okay, so you're still writing absolutely everything I do, so staying with me. Okay, so we've got an expression here. All right, I'm going to write it kind of big and leave a lot of room around it so I can put things next to it. All right, so like a 2x plus a 3y minus a 7. All right, we're going to start with identifying the vocab word term. All right, this expression has 3 terms. 2x is a term, 3y is a term, all right, and then the -7 is a term. All right, so that right there tells me that I have 3 terms specifically. I'm just going to write the word terms down there because that's my vocabulary word. All right, but there are 3 of them. They are separated by plus or minus signs. So that's how I can tell how many terms I have, is because they are separated by those pluses and minus signs. So I have 3 terms in this algebraic expression. All right, now hopefully from middle school you've heard the word coefficient. All right, coefficients are numbers that sit in front of variables. All right, so just that 2 right there, the 2 is sitting directly in front of the x, so it's a coefficient. The 3 is sitting directly in front of the y, so those are coefficients. So that's another vocab word. All right, numbers that set in front of variables are coefficients. Now notice I did not circle the 7. All right, the 7 is not sitting in front of a variable. I don't have a variable over here. All right, so this is not a coefficient. All right, it's just a plain number. All right, now we don't want to call it number because that's kind of boring. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to call the, and I'm going to kind of include the negative sign too, because it is a -7. It says -7, okay, plus minus is a -7. All right, this is called a constant. All right, because it doesn't change, right? 7 is 7, -7 is -7 is -7. It doesn't change. This term will change, this first term that has a coefficient of 2 will change, because if I had x as 2, then it's going to be, that term would equal something. If x was 3, it would equal something else. So these terms change because they have variables in them. This is a constant that will never change. It's always going to have a -7 at the end of the problem. Okay. And then the only other thing that is left is the x and the y. All right, the x and the y are the variables. Hoping we can see that yellow. Yeah, it's not too bad. All right, so the variables are x and y. All right, so all of those words are words that I'm going to use, all right, throughout the entire year. Variables, constants, coefficients, terms. So you need to know what those are to be able to understand what I'm trying to explain to you. All right, but again, I'm hoping that vocab you already are pretty familiar with because you dealt with it in middle school. All right, now section 1-1 you're just going to work with these algebraic expressions and equations, and you're going to write them out in words, and you're also going to write them out algebraically. All right, so to see some of the types of problems that you're going to practice on in your homework, the directions might say, write the algebraic expression. They can also say, write the variable expression. So you got to be used to whatever vocab that they give you. All right. And then they're going to give you a problem that is written out in words, and you are going to translate it to an algebraic expression. So you're going to see sentences in today's homework. You're going to see things that say the product of X and 12. You got to know vocab from elementary and middle school. Product means to what? Add, subtract, multiply, or divide. Multiply. All right. What two items are being multiplied? X and 12. All right. You did this in middle school. All right. Now, the only thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to be extremely picky. You have to write it in an algebra way. You have to write it in a high school algebra way, because when you go on to algebra 2 as a junior, there's only one way to write this. All right. Things that are not acceptable. All right. Not acceptable. Write this down. Not acceptable. Okay. I will not let you do 12.x. All right. You can't use that dot in there. Yes. Does this tell me two things are being multiplied together and one of them's 12, one of them's x? Yes. However, it's not a high school way to write an algebraic expression. I'm not going to let you do an x and then a dot and then a 12. So you can't use a dot in there at all. All right. I'm not going to let you put a set of parentheses around them, because you were taught in middle school parentheses mean to multiply. All right. But we don't write a number times a letter in that way. All right. I will not let you squish them together. I will not let you write an x and then a 12 afterwards, because we do not put coefficients to the right of variables. All right, so there's only one correct way to write this. The coefficient needs to be in front and it needs to be squished together. So the only right answer is 12x. And if you are doing it in Math Excel, you're going to type it, or it'll be a multiple choice question and you'll just click. But if you are doing it by hand, when you have to write answers on paper, that's when this stuff happens. All right. And then I will count it wrong. Okay. So like I said, you have done these in middle school. You did these a lot, probably in 7th grade and in 8th grade. All right. Another thing that we need to make sure that you're not, because they might have accepted some of these in middle school. Okay. We're not going to accept them now. All right. Let's use the word quotient. The quotient of 10 and k. All right, so you're writing this down. The quotient of 10 and k. Anthony, stay with me. You got to write this down. The quotient of 10 and k. All right, so again, you've got to know your vocab. All right, quotient means to what? Add, subtract, multiply, or divide. Means to divide. Okay, but not acceptable. You may not use that old-fashioned divide by sign. This is in the not acceptable category. Okay. You may not use that. You may not use a long division bar. All right. You may not use a long division bar. All right. All quotients are going to be written as fractions. Okay. So if I want to write the correct answer here, I'm going to use a horizontal bar, just like a fraction bar. All right, and I'm going to put one of those numbers on the top. I'm going to put one of them on the bottom. All right, the easiest way to remember this, if we're just trying to take the quotient of 10 and k, all right, we read left to right. So when we read left to right, we go top to bottom. So that means the 10 has to be on the top and the k has to be on the bottom. All right, if you reverse them, it's not right. All right. The quotient of 10 and K, read left to right, is written top to bottom. Okay. And it does make a difference because why? Remember when you were in elementary and you did long division, the top number went inside the box, the bottom number went outside the box. All right. So it makes a difference if you put them in a different order. Okay. All right. So you did several of these. All right. Each one of these were algebraic expressions. Let's hit two other vocab words. All right. I would like to think that you know, if I use the phrase squared, that you know what that means. All right. I would also like to think that you know what cubed means at this point. Okay. So squared is what power? 2. And cubed is 3. All right, so this would be an x squared. This would be an x to the 3rd power. So that comes from your vocabulary with exponents. All right, so those are expressions. All right, and just 2 examples. All right, if you need more examples, you can download the textbook and see lots of them. You can download that PowerPoint and look at lots more examples of that. Okay. All right, now we're going to take a look at equations. You're also going to have to write algebraic equations. All right, so let's say the directions say write the algebraic equation. And these will be a little bit longer. All right, these are going to be a little bit longer. Let's say it says the sum of 11 and K is 24. All right, keyword here, or key thing here, you're writing an equation, all right, which means it has to have an equal sign. All right, so in your answer, if you don't have an equal sign, you don't have the right answer, for starters. All right, and the key here, the word is going to be the equal sign. The word is literally means the equal sign. All right, so again, you got to identify. So here's my equal sign. I'm going to have a bunch of stuff on the left. I'm only going to have a 24 on the right. I can read this left to right. Hopefully you can look at this and go, okay, we got the word sum, another vocabulary words, that add, subtract, multiply, divide. Add. All right, what 2 things are being added? 11 and K are being added. All right, so that one's pretty straightforward. I'm just going to have an 11. And I'm adding to that a K. All right. Now, the next, I'm reading this left to right. I'm doing this left-hand part of the problem. Okay. The next thing in the sentence is the is. The is the equal sign. So that means I better put an equal sign down next. And then I haven't wrote the 24 anywhere. So the 24 goes on that side. If they get creative with their sentences, and they start to put them in terms of like real life, explanations or whatever, they might tell you the total cost is $24. Am I going to put a dollar sign in this? No. I saw people shaking their heads no. All right. So there's no dollar signs. There's no cent signs, because as soon as you put a dollar sign in this, you don't have algebra anymore. All right. So let's write over here. So no dollar signs. Right now, no, there's no dollar signs. There is no labels. All right. Again, if they were trying to make this into some type of real world explanation, they might be talking about feet or miles. And so that in the sentence they give you might say 24 miles. All right. we do not write the word miles in this, because as soon as you put a label in here or you put a $sign in here, you don't have an algebraic equation anymore. Okay, so no labels, no $signs. Okay, just pull the numbers out and use them. Now this is really straightforward. Let's do one that's a little bit harder, a little bit more challenging. Let's say we've got 10 minus the product of x and 3 is 36. Now, in both of these examples, I have given you the variable that you have to use. In that first one, I gave you a k, so your answer has to have a k in it. Here, I've given you an x, so it's got to be an x. All right, technically, they don't have to give you that, right? I'm sure you saw these last year where it says the sum of 11 and some number. Okay, pick an x, use an x. If they don't tell you what variable, just use an x, because most of the time I always use x. We always use x. All right, so, but in both of these, I specifically told you what variable you have to use. All right, so we're going to see the word minus right here. Again, is that add, subtract, multiply, or divide? That's subtract. So I know I've got to subtract. All right, and I'm taking 10 minus all of this stuff over here. So again, I've got to read left to right. All right, now what am I minusing? The product of x and 3. So you kind of have to realize that that whole thing goes together, the product of x and 3. All right, now that's almost like our algebraic expression we did at the beginning. How do I show multiplying a number and a letter? 3x. Number has to go in front. Okay, so this part right here is just going to be a 3x. I know that the equal sign is going to be the is. I have a plain 36 over there. I got a plain 10 there. You ought to be able to go left to right on this one. Write down the 10 first. Now I am minusing the product of x and 3. So that'll be a 3x. Then I'm ready for the equal sign. And then I've got the 36 on the end. All right. You probably did this in 6th grade. Then you probably did it in 7th grade. Then you probably did it again in 8th grade. Okay. Probably should have. All right, so this stuff ought to be relatively simple. All right, that takes care of everything that is in section 1-1. Okay, anybody have questions over this so far?